This is the part that I also really enjoy. It's getting to know our panelists. And today I'm excited to talk about the metaverse, what it is, how do we fit into it. Now let's bring them up. Raj, David, Oscar, Joshua, and Ryan, come join me on stage. All right, come on, everybody, give us a clap. There we go. That's good. All right, go on down. All the way down, all the way down. You can, sure. It's a good spot. Here we go. All right, so we're going to have a little bit of fun. And I'm big on storytelling. And you know what's interesting? When you get to know people and ask them questions about how they came into this space, or more importantly, when did it click? I met earlier with Tali, and we were talking about her first 1.5 years. She's from NFT Basel. Her first 1.5 years, and how advanced she is compared to what I think where I was my first 1.5 years in. Now I think I'm 6 years in, and what I thought I knew. And so I want to ask each of our panelists, when was that moment for you that it clicked, that it finally became the aha moment? And for those in your room, have you ever had that moment, the aha moment? Raise your hand. Yeah, it's that moment where it's like $1 million idea. It all comes to make sense. So from our panelists, talk about that aha moment from the metaverse or NFTs or blockchain. When did it hit for you? Start here.
Yeah, so for me, the aha moment was when I was at gym. I was wearing my Google Glass like a nerd, and I was talking to one of the NBA stars, and he pretty much said to me, like, wouldn't it be fun if we can capture all these real-life moments and create an engagement platform where NBA players are engaging with their fans, and you're live streaming all this event in Metaverse through your regular day-to-day activities. And that's where the concept of this entire Metaverse blockchain, bringing NBA players to real world, came into life for me.
And that's when it happened. All right, how about you?
Yeah, really it was a conversation I had with my friends. We are big on gaming and crypto and NFTs, obviously. And it just kind of clicked that we could do a lot if we combined all those things. And we started off with the Lost Business Club, which was a virtual apartment metaverse type of thing. And initially when my co-founder told me about it, I wasn't big on the whole metaverse space, but when you explained it to me, I was like, okay, this is interesting. This has some depth into it. This has potential. And I saw also the market back then was very favorable for all the metaverse ideas when we minted our collection, and it just seemed to click perfectly with what I wanted to do also in my life at that moment.
And David?
So I think for me, it was two things. One, we were talking to Visa International, and they let it be known that, bad actor fraud was about $30 billion a year. And there had to be a better way to figure that out. And so we started thinking about, if someone had their own identity, they could prove themselves, that would be really great. And then I coupled that with watching the movie Ready Player One. I said, that was my aha moment. So this is what we want to do. We want to create an open world where people are known, because Percival was known. And really that was the aha moments for us.
I guess it was 2016 in China, Sinopharm, the largest pharmaceutical supply chain. Just seeing that utility commodity brought to life in different forms. So I see the metaverse as a spatial web. It's just internet brought to life, right? You have the physical and non-physical form. So for me, just seeing that come to life in the future, all the way back when China's kind of connecting it to all forms of society in different ways, that for me was kind of the first aha moment.
So I worked a lot in innovation for like 10 years across both LA and Tokyo, and was a part of working with the people behind the early stages of crypto. And I think what a lot of people forget is gaming has always been such a core part of this. If you look up that Vitalik invented Ethereum because he couldn't access a certain skin in a game that he played. And so early on with people in the sort of first wave of crypto, they would take the currencies and the assets from the game, and they were just transitioning that out into the world to solve problems. I feel like now we've come full circle again. We're taking those digital assets in the world and we're putting them back in the environments that we're building.
What I love is that what you're hearing is that there starts to be a process. And then ideas are easy. Execution ultimately becomes the hard part. And talking about process, you're a major brand. You're Gucci, you're Fendi, you're the NBA. What is the selection process to get chosen and picked to work with some of the world's leading brands? If I'm a Metaverse, what should be my process to get their attention and to ultimately check those boxes?
So like with any startup, right, it is trial and error, but there has to be certain strategic inclination that you have to think about when you're building a product. Some product metrics are going to be super successful, some are not going to be. But you really need to talk to the number one person of your product is your consumer, the user. For us, it's all the athletes. So we are obviously highly connected in NBA, NFL, to some extent also with now NHL. But with partnership with NBPA and also talking to many different Lakers, we are based in Los Angeles, so talking to many of the Lakers players, they had this desire and need at the celebrity level that they wanted to convert their brand power into like an NFT/e-commerce platform. And they were also looking at this as a more about community give back platform, because many of our athletes, like, they don't need cash, right? So they are very rich from a financial perspective, but they are looking at a community engagement model. So when we started talking to our athletes, that led to talking to obviously the fans, and that became like a sweet spot of what the gap is, industry gap. And obviously, many of you guys may have read the book, The Blue Ocean Strategy, and that really is figuring out which gap is not being served by the industry and building a product around it with a consumer in mind, or your influencers or NBA players in mind, and that really scaling that idea further.
You know, I'm going to now jump over to you, Joshua, because you and I were having a conversation about nonprofits and giving back. So I'm a major nonprofit, or maybe I'm a small nonprofit, and I'm looking to develop something sustainable, something that still allows the people in my community to support it. How does the Metaverse fit in?
That was a great question. I think for us, how we look at it through the eyes of a child as well, we have a DAO actually, and in some ways I believe a DAO can replace a 501c3 nonprofit foundation in the US, because we call it ownification. And similar to Brittany, basically owning your own data, owning your own journey and your path forward. So for a child to see the transparency, if you give money to Haiti, for example, to see where that goes, the child being an NFT or social tokens, a part of that journey, incentives, being able to see that the future of philanthropy through, like for example, even a chamber of commerce using a DAO to have it fully decentralized. I think in the next 10 years, you're going to be looking at different innovations once technology is there. I don't think technology in terms of software to be able to scale DAOs are there yet, but once it's there, I think that more Chamber of Commerce and others will be able to apply that. And then after the Chamber proves it, then other philanthropists and others, foundations will look at models and then go to legislation, and legislation will then help be able to approve that to become, and instead of 501c3, then you would have basically a paradigm shift in that sense. So I would say in the next 10 years.
And so David, I want you to kind of jump in there as well, because you're a builder and you're building what the consumers want. You're solving problems. And you mentioned a problem offline. How many problems out there right now are looking to be solved?
Oh, there's many. The challenge always is, whether it's nonprofit or commercial, is finding the right champion. So, you know, most brands, whether they're a software brand or they're a consumer brand, a retail brand, or a nonprofit, many of them are fearful of being first to market. They want to follow. They say they're leaders, but they really want to follow. What you need to find is a champion. One example we found early on in our career is we worked with the Disney organization, and we had this, many years ago, I developed a language technology, and that language technology made it easier for them to do interviews with their celebrities on a red carpet around the world. So we were solving a major problem, and they were willing to take that risk because the hill to get past that was so high to climb. So if you could put in front of an organization a way to reduce the hill very quickly and very efficiently with very little risk, you're likely to get the opportunity to build much faster.
Yeah, so Oscar and Ryan, I'm going to ask you then the question of, you know, with all the metaverse options out there, how do you pick the one that's right for you? Is it you just throw a bunch of darts, or is there more of a process that should go into this?
My belief is that there are metaverses almost for any sector, really. You could be into entertainment, you could be into e-commerce, you can be more into events as well. So there is demand for every sector. Gaming as well is still one of the big draws for the metaverse. The most popular ones are very much gaming centric. And it really depends what experience users are looking for. In our case, it is answering kind of the demand that e-commerce hasn't really evolved all that much for the past 20 years, and we have this amazing, the amazing tools that come with video games and the amazing concepts that come through gamification that we can add to these experiences and make them even richer. And this is, I think, very attractive for brands because they always look for ways to increase customer engagement with what they're selling, obviously. And customers, users are looking for a good time, generally speaking. So if you can combine both of these elements, you can create value. And there is value for every sector of the metaverse. There are different niches that are answering different demands.
So I'm hearing the word neighborhoods. There's different neighborhoods that, you know, guys grew up in all parts of the world, from Texas to Florida to all over, Monaco and beyond. And each of our neighborhoods help to create us. Maybe some of the indoctrination, where you're born is ultimately what you're going to believe. So as these metaverses now, as they are bringing on people and these collectives are starting these communities, the same question for you is, how would you choose one? Because maybe today I want to be in this neighborhood and tomorrow I want to be in that.
Yeah, so I come from a different direction with this. I really believe that everybody's kind of building into the metaverse. I think there's one. Now, corporations are a part of that, and they want to kind of take their corner and close it off and make a lot of money with it. But I think if you really look at what's happening, this is a movement, and it's much more done from the bottom up than from the top down. And similar to what he said, this is not being led by institutions. In one sense, they don't have the permission to do this. If you've seen, there's a lot of big publishers that have games with millions of players. They'll announce something to do with Web3, and there'll be huge backlash from their players. I think who has the permission right now are the sort of really talented people around the world that are just going to build new things from this, native, from the ground up. And I think, you know, I define the metaverse as the internet built by game developers. Not everybody would agree with that, but I think if you look at it in that sense, then game developers have a huge opportunity right now.
So then, Raj, from your side, is how valuable is your avatar?
So your avatar is definitely very valuable in the sense that there are certain elements of interop that has to be present in your avatar for to be portable across many neighborhoods or the games or the metaverses. Because if you are in a more of a closed environment, and I'll use, again, Lisa Leslie as an example. So you may know her, like she's a WNBA superstar. And as an athlete, she wants to be an avatar promoting not only women in sports, talking about women leadership, talking about several different academies that she wants to build. And today we are sports-centric. Let's say Oscar makes a metaverse that is education-centric. Lisa's avatar should be able to float from, say, sports to, let's say, education, right? So that's where the portability of avatars becomes very critical, and that's where partnership and that's where DigitalBits and many others are critical in the ecosystem, because we want to really connect as a community. And I agree with what you just said, is that Metaverse is nothing but developed by game developers. I worked at Riot Games, I worked at Warner Brothers early on, and having built 30+ titles in my lifetime, I truly believe Metaverse is really like a game character that floats around multiple metaverses.
You know, and David, you and I, we share a mutual friend, Gene Simmons, mentor of mine and a mentor of yours. So talk about the commercial value of a brand, specifically within the metaverse. How significant or how important will this be to those in the future that are going to potentially acquire the company in this reality or this neighborhood?
Well, I think it's an interesting question, because at the end of the day, you know, brands have a tendency to morph. And as brands morph, their value changes. I mean, You know, if we look at again, Disney 20 years ago, we look at Disney today, with the addition of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Marvel Universe, I mean, they've re-exploded. So they keep reinventing themselves, and Gene is a master of reinventing himself. So I think that brands or individuals or consumers, whoever's creating that IP, has to have some ownership. But again, agreeing with Raj and Oscar and everyone else, that there has to be interoperability. There has to be the ability to float between point A and point B. And as Brittany said, and we said earlier, some of that's going to be connected to your personal data and your digital identity. So it really is going to start with, am I who I say I am, and can I take that information, which I own, manage, and control, and can I move it through avatars, whether it's one avatar or 1,000 avatars? And in the case of Gene, he might be Gene Simmons, the business person. He might be Gene Simmons, you know, the Family Jewels guy. He might be Gene Simmons, the demon. But while he's always Gene Simmons, he may have 3 different avatars or 100 different avatars.
So you said something about interoperability. Joshua, what will it take for interoperability?
Well, there are things that we've been working on for interoperability for smart contracts, being able to exchange value between those systems. I think interoperability in terms of what we're looking at, in terms of what I'm going to speak about later, the interoperability of what we call meta hugs, and so that the first of its kind, truly agnostic of religion or race or rich or poor, young or old, being able to understand how we connect across game systems, across SDKs, APIs, and that connection between Epic Games and Roblox, for example. What does that look like? And so that meta hug is truly in the physical world and non-physical, being able to give someone a hug. And so through basically, whether you name it a brand, make it truly interoperable and a loyalty system to be able to play it forward. So when we have play to learn, basically we're incentivizing learning, and so gamified education is the future of learning. So being able to bring that to the metaverse in the physical and non-physical world of incentivizing, giving free education to the world, to be able to incentivize and to give equal opportunity across the board. So with those basically meta hugs, you can incentivize through social tokens and those loyalty point systems to truly make those interoperable. So once that happens, I think that's where basically the world is able to click and be on the same page. And if we can at least have some common denominators, that's where things start to roll, and things where we can actually unify in certain things.
You know, now moving over, I love that. So Oscar, as we now go into this world that is the metaverse, how prevalent will implants become? And I'm talking about the kind you put in your eye, or something potentially that you put over your head, or some sort of, is this going to be a world of complete immersion? Or is it going to just be some version of augmented reality?
I think we are still very much in the early days of virtual reality. Augmented reality is at a point where it's already much more usable and interesting. But I think the main, like when we talk about the metaverse, there is often the talk of virtual reality next to it. And while I do think it's a level of immersion that's of course unmatched at the moment, really being in those settings, we are still far from being at the stage where everybody owns a virtual headset, where everybody can easily use one as well. You have to be a bit tech proficient to be able to use one. You have to have the right computer, the right settings for all those things. So there are still some limits at the present moment. And I think the metaverse is first of all about accessibility. It has to be easy to enter. It has to be easy to use, to understand, to really reach mass adoption. And things such as virtual reality, augmented reality, those are optional elements at the moment that can make the experience richer. But they're not mandatory at this present moment, in my opinion.
And now, Ryan, on your side, same question.
Can you repeat the question?
All right, we'll throw you a new one then. Buying land. We'll move over to that. I'll ask each of the panelists the same question. Is, for many of us that are looking at different metaverses, some of us even own land. Talk about the process of what do you do next? How do you even build?
Well, I think there's so many lessons to learn from hindsight of the internet, right? We're about to enter the third phase of it. If you go to the first one, we had networks connecting different websites together, and there was something called the $1 Million Homepage. It was the first website where somebody sold each pixel. There were 1 million pixels on the website, and brands and creators would do that, and he made $1 million, and it was basically digital land on this first website. I kind of think of these worlds that we're now entering as the $1 billion home worlds, you know? And if you look at what happened to the $1 million homepage, it didn't last. There were many other homepages that came after that. So this is becoming sort of a land grab of this clout, right? There's a lot of celebrity partnerships that are happening, and I think it is significant, but the land that is being sort of bought now is artificially scarce. And so if we look over the next 10 years, there's going to be infinite worlds, infinite numbers of environments where people can be building things. And what we really care about is the association of who's in that space with us, right? So if you look at like Decentraland and Sandbox, why they're getting more and more momentum is because they're getting other parts of culture to buy into it and to create things that people want to be a part of.
And are you seeing the same thing on your side, Raj?
Yeah, so also going back to your original question, from concept to execution of the land, right? So imagine, and we are doing this right now, you want to build out, let's say, Los Angeles Meta Crypto.com stadium, right? Which is a basketball stadium arena. So that's an ideation fact that came up by our Laker team members and so forth. And when we had that concept, right, we had an opportunity. Should we build it in Sandbox? Should we build it in Decentraland? Should we build our own land environment? And the simplest thing that came out, we want to be not an isolated, and this goes back to interoperability. We don't want to be an isolated whether you want to standard technologies or standard blockchains or layer one solutions, or you want to use something that is very non-compliant.
There we go. Now we're back. And I actually think hopefully everybody picked that up. But going to the compliance aspect.
Can I add something to that?
Please do.
So I think going back to this idea of game developers, right? There's an entire discipline of people. There's about 10 million game developers out there. They really understand the skill set of environment building and character building and rigging. What we've seen so far is a phase of web developers who are gamers and they really like games. And so that's why they're choosing Sandbox or Decentraland or one of these user-generated platforms. But there are two engines, Unity and Unreal, which game developers know very well. And you're not as limited, right? In the sense that if you use Decentraland or Sandbox, you're building something on a platform that is defined and limited. But if you use these game engines, your imagination is the only limit, right? You can build a lot more, and it takes more technical skill. So
and what are the top ones then, in terms of gaming platforms? Like which ones?
The top two are Unity and Unreal. There's about 10 million developers between the two of those.
Between Unity and Unreal.
Unreal Engine, yes. So Epic Games owns Unreal Engine. They also created Fortnite. So they kind of just bankroll what they do with Fortnite earnings. But the next phase that we will see is a full exploration of use cases with game developers. People that know how to use those engines, people that know how to do IK retargeting, rigging, things that, you know, if you're not a game developer, you don't necessarily understand.
And Oscar, you're nodding quite a bit.
Yeah, I completely agree with that point. I think the freedom of using these tools, Unity and Unreal, it's already such a... most of the work is kind of done because you're using those engines, and now you can just use those game developers' creativity and skills to directly apply their vision and make it real, rather than limiting yourself by joining a platform that does things in its own ways or in its own style and aesthetic. We are developing on Unity, for example, and because our developers are well, they're trained on Unity, and we have been really enjoying the experience, and it's allowing us to really create how we want it to look like, and to also differentiate ourselves from what already exists in some ways.
So now as we go to the last question for each of our panelists, David, what are you working on?
Oh boy. So we're working on the integration of digital identity and avatars, and we're using Unreal Engine 5 for exactly that reason. And we're doing pixel streaming with no download. So there is no, you don't have to download graphic packages so that you can use it on any device as you would view Netflix or Disney Plus. And then so we're taking digital identity, making the avatars the intermediary, so a fully rigged, lifelike avatar into a open metaverse environment where land isn't scarce, and we've created economic inclusiveness, allowing people to earn their way into owning land, because people have a tendency to do things generally within about 5 miles of where they live. So if you can give people land, you can get them doing things in land, you get them building in that land, then they're going to start to do more and more. So that's what we're working on right now.
Same question, Joshua.
I guess gamified education, in summary, the future of learning is understanding that. I think we're doing a few things with Beyond Meta Holdings, but playtolearn.com and MetaHug is our focus right now. And interoperability, even helping with no-code interoperability, so that with the future of gaming, maybe 10 years out, but I think that that's also going to be a huge aspect, whether it's Unity or Unreal. Who knows, it could be a third party. But I think that that's going to be a huge opportunity with the no-code interoperability. But the play-to-learn aspect of helping brands really understand the incentive mechanism of educating before they actually sell. So if, for example, PepsiCo is selling coconut water, how do you basically educate about electrolytes first? And in your game, basically say, hey, you shoot better in your collaboration with Nike in a basketball game. You shoot better if you have electrolytes and you have water or nutrition in terms of electrolytes. So I think that that's kind of the paradigm shift for us, understanding brands and brand integrations, but understanding the children where they're at and helping them, but also giving them the tools to incentivize them to create the games that they want to play. So it's a paradigm shift as well. Instead of Nike just hiring an agency and a bunch of adults building the game in Roblox for the kids to play, I think that's fine. But for us, our kids now, ages 4 to 25, we give them the tools and incentivize them, and they create the games that they want to play. So the metrics, and we have 7 basic levels of engagement. So we have the metrics in real time for the brands to understand. So I think that it's all about data. So understanding that data and how it plays.
Oscar?
Yeah, well, we are working hard on making the metaverse a bit more than a buzzword and actually making it something that's useful. We are creating gamified experiences for brands, companies, NFT projects as well, to be able to showcase and sell their products and services in a more immersive and interesting way, using levers that have been working for the video game industry for years now and applying them to the more traditional e-commerce sector. And on top of that, we are making it a social experience, because that is also what the metaverse is about. It is about bringing together communities, because that is what the internet has allowed for years now, and to be bringing them around what they like, creating the center of interest, this point of interest. I like sports, I will go to this sports meta shop and meet other people that think alike, look alike, see what their avatar looks like. Oh, well, their avatars of the sports meta shop look alike, because they have the same, the same likings. Same thing for the meta shop that is about more the fashion and the luxury industry. So yeah, we are working on these different things.
Yeah. So we call it ourselves as building a multiverse, which is obviously metaverse plus in real life. So one of the key things for us differentiation-wise is that we want to make sure that every NFT or every single asset you buy, whether it's a seat inside a stadium, whether it's an NFT of an avatar, has some real life purpose. So for example, if you bought a Los Angeles Lakers stadium seat, you will have an access to physically go to the LA stadium and meet some of the Laker players inside the game. So it's like you're meeting real-world athletes with real-world stadiums in our platform, and that's something that's very unique. And we are only able to do it because of our strategic partnership with NBPA, A16Z, and all those guys. Is that we want to make sure every single NFT has a in real-life utility.
Right.
So for the past year, we've spent all of our time and focus designing and building software that drops into these engines, Unity and Unreal. So these are closed systems of software, but we've designed a layer that basically is the interface between the wallet and the engine. And so we've done that for identity, and we've done that for inventory or property. And it essentially maps ownership from what you have in your wallet and then creates a whole set of tools for game developers to really kind of manifest that in a game, so that if you own it in the wallet, you have the ability to unlock it now in the environment. And gaming is just where we're going to start. That's just what has most of the traction. But you know, like if the metaverse is the internet built by game developers, then it's going to go as broad as the internet, which is every industry and probably every person on earth. You know, so I recognized how important that was in 2017. Created a company called Crucible, and now have realized that a commercial closed for-profit company alone is not going to be able to achieve this objective. So I run a DAO called Open Meta, and it's just about collecting people and building technology to sort of fill in the gaps.
Thank you to our esteemed panelists. Thank you to our audience. And for all of you, I don't know what your takeaway was, but mine was that we are all a part of this. And to ask questions of a wise man, and Brittany Kaiser, a wise woman, is to gain wisdom. Thank you all again.